My name is Chloe, and I'm 32 years old. For the past 5 years, I've poured my heart and soul into Sterling Innovations, a marketing firm nestled in the bustling heart of Chicago. I started as a junior account manager, fresh out of college, brimming with ambition and a fierce desire to prove myself in this competitive city. I quickly climbed the ranks, my dedication and innovative strategies earning me a reputation as a rising star within the company. My role as senior account manager was demanding, requiring long hours and constant travel, but I thrived on the challenge. I loved the energy of the office, the thrill of landing big clients, and the satisfaction of seeing my campaigns come to life. My boss, Mr. Harrison, a man in his late 50s with a seemingly affable demeanor, often praised my work publicly, making me feel valued and indispensable. He often spoke about diversity and inclusion, making me believe Sterling Innovations was a truly progressive workplace. Outside of work, my world revolved around my beautiful 5-year-old daughter, Lily. She was my sunshine, my reason for everything, and balancing my demanding career with single motherhood was a constant, intricate dance. Every morning, I woke before dawn to prepare her breakfast, braid her hair, and ensure she was ready for school, all before I even thought about my own commute. It was a juggling act, but one I performed with immense love and determination. I had always been meticulous about my work-life balance, ensuring my professional commitments never compromised my responsibilities as a mother. I rarely took sick days, even when I felt under the weather, pushing through to meet deadlines and maintain my perfect attendance record. My colleagues often commented on my unwavering dedication, sometimes with admiration, sometimes with a hint of concern. The company culture, while outwardly progressive, had a subtle undercurrent of expectation. There was an unspoken rule that true commitment meant prioritizing work above all else, a sentiment often reinforced by Mr. Harrison's own workaholic habits. He would frequently send emails late into the night and on weekends, setting a precedent that made many employees feel pressure to respond immediately. Despite this, I believed I had found a place where my talent and hard work would be recognized, regardless of my background. As one of the few Black women in a senior position, I felt a responsibility to excel, not just for myself, but to pave the way for others. I genuinely thought Mr. Harrison saw my potential and was invested in my growth within the company. My relationship with Mr. Harrison seemed solid. We had regular check-ins, and he always appeared supportive of my career trajectory. He knew about Lily and had, on occasion, expressed understanding when I had to leave early for a school event, though these instances were rare. I trusted him, believing his words about valuing his employees. This trust was particularly important because I was planning a major presentation for a potential new client, a deal that could significantly boost Sterling Innovations' portfolio. I had spent weeks preparing, working late nights after Lily was asleep, refining every slide and rehearsing every word. This was my chance to shine even brighter. The days leading up to the presentation were a whirlwind of activity, but I felt confident and ready. I had meticulously accounted for every detail, both professionally and personally. I had arranged for Lily's grandmother to be on standby just in case, ensuring there would be no last-minute hitches. I remember feeling a sense of quiet pride. I was a Black woman, a single mother, navigating a demanding corporate world in a major city, and I was succeeding. I was breaking barriers, not just for myself, but for every little girl who looked like Lily. This feeling of accomplishment fueled my drive. Then, the unexpected happened. The night before my crucial presentation, Lily woke up with a high fever and a persistent cough. My heart sank as I felt her forehead. It was burning hot. My carefully constructed plans suddenly seemed insignificant in the face of my child's distress. I spent the night comforting her, administering medicine, and checking her temperature every hour. By morning, her fever hadn't broken, and she was clearly too ill to go to school. My immediate priority shifted entirely to her well-being, as any mother's would. With a heavy heart, I knew I couldn't go into the office, let alone lead a major client presentation. I had to be there for Lily. It was a difficult decision, knowing the importance of the meeting, but there was no other choice. My daughter needed me more. I called Mr. Harrison first thing in the morning, explaining Lily's sudden illness and my need to take a few days off to care for her. I offered to work remotely if possible, or at least to brief a colleague thoroughly on the presentation details. I was prepared to do whatever it took to minimize disruption. He listened patiently, his voice calm and understanding. "Chloe, your daughter comes first," he said, his words a balm to my anxious mind. "Take the time you need. We'll handle the presentation. Just keep us updated on Lily's condition." His permission felt genuine, a testament to the supportive environment I thought I was in. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. His understanding reaffirmed my belief that Sterling Innovations was truly a place that cared about its employees, not just their output. I thanked him profusely, promising to be back as soon as Lily was better, and hung up feeling a little less stressed. The next 5 days were a blur of sleepless nights and anxious days, all centered around Lily. Her fever persisted, and her cough worsened, prompting a visit to the emergency room. The doctors diagnosed her with a severe respiratory infection, emphasizing the need for constant monitoring and rest. My world shrunk to the 4 walls of Lily's bedroom. Every breath she took a measure of my own anxiety. I barely slept, checking on her constantly, administering medication, and trying to keep her comfortable. The professional world, with its deadlines and client presentations, seemed miles away, a distant hum I could barely register. My only focus was my little girl, her small, fragile body battling the illness. I sent daily updates to Mr. Harrison, as he had requested. My emails were brief, professional, and focused solely on Lily's improving condition and my estimated return to work. I wanted to reassure him that I was still committed, even while dealing with this personal crisis. I received polite, short replies, usually just "Thanks for the update, Chloe. Hope Lily feels better soon." During this time, I also checked my work emails periodically, just to ensure nothing critical was missed. I saw that the big client presentation had gone ahead, led by my colleague, Mark, who was a white man with less experience than me but had a good rapport with Mr. Harrison. I felt a pang of disappointment not to have been there, but Lily's health was paramount. I noticed a few odd things in the periphery of my work communications. Some internal emails about restructuring and optimizing team efficiency started circulating, but I dismissed them as standard corporate jargon. Every company undergoes these phases, and I was too preoccupied with Lily to give them much thought. There was also a new project brief that landed in my inbox, one that seemed to be a significant account I had been eyeing for months. It was addressed to Mark, not me, even though I had been the one to initially pitch for it and lay the groundwork. This felt strange, but again, I pushed it aside, attributing it to my absence. My colleagues, with whom I usually had a friendly relationship, seemed to be keeping their distance. My calls and texts to check in on work-related matters went unanswered or received delayed, vague responses. It was unusual, making me feel a bit isolated, but I assumed they were just busy covering for me. I tried to reach out to Sarah, a close colleague and friend, to ask about the presentation and the new project. Her replies were unusually terse, suggesting she was either very busy or uncomfortable. "Everything's fine, Chloe," she texted back. "Don't worry about work. Focus on Lily." Her tone was off, but I couldn't pinpoint why. The silence from Mr. Harrison regarding my return date also began to feel a little unsettling. While he had initially been understanding, he hadn't followed up to ask when I expected to be back, or if I needed any support. It was a subtle shift from his usual attentive management style. Lily slowly started to recover. Her fever broke on the 4th day, and her cough began to subside. The relief I felt was immense, a physical weight lifting from my shoulders. I could finally see the light at the end of the tunnel, and my thoughts slowly began to drift back to work. I informed Mr. Harrison that I would be back in the office on Monday, eager to catch up on everything and dive back into my projects. I received a prompt email back, not from him directly, but from his assistant, asking me to schedule a meeting with Mr. Harrison first thing Monday morning. The subject line simply read, "Meeting with Mr. Harrison." The formality of the email, coming from his assistant rather than a direct message, struck me as odd. It felt cold, impersonal, and a stark contrast to our previous interactions. A tiny knot of unease began to form in my stomach, but I tried to rationalize it away. Perhaps he was just busy. I spent the weekend preparing for my return, reviewing emails, and trying to get a sense of what I had missed. The more I looked, the more I noticed the subtle shifts. Fewer emails addressed to me, more projects seemingly reallocated, and a general sense of being on the periphery. A growing sense of dread started to creep in. It wasn't just about the missed presentation or the new project, it was a feeling that something fundamental had changed during my absence. The supportive environment I thought I was part of suddenly felt precarious, like a house of cards. Despite the growing anxiety, I tried to remain optimistic. I had worked too hard, achieved too much, to let a few strange emails rattle me. I reminded myself of my accomplishments, my value to the company, and the trust Mr. Harrison had always seemed to place in me. I dressed carefully on Monday morning, a sharp navy suit reflecting my renewed determination. I wanted to project confidence and readiness to jump back into my role. As I walked into the Sterling Innovations building, the familiar hum of the office felt different, almost unwelcoming. The meeting with Mr. Harrison was scheduled for 9 a.m. I arrived promptly, my heart pounding a little faster than usual, but I held my head high. His office door was closed, a rare occurrence, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves, and knocked. He invited me in, his usual warm smile replaced by a somber, almost strained expression. He didn't offer me a seat, which was unusual, and remained standing behind his large mahogany desk. The air in the room felt heavy, charged with an unspoken tension that immediately put me on edge. "Chloe, thank you for coming in," he began, his voice devoid of its usual joviality. "Please close the door." I complied, my hand trembling slightly as the latch clicked shut, sealing us in the quiet office. My mind raced, trying to anticipate what was coming. He cleared his throat, avoiding eye contact. "I'm afraid I have some difficult news." My stomach dropped. I braced myself, expecting to hear about a project setback or a client loss. Anything but what he said next. His words were precise, clinical, and utterly devastating. "We've decided to go in a different direction with the senior account manager role," he stated, his gaze finally meeting mine, but it was cold, distant. "Your position at Sterling Innovations has been terminated, effective immediately." The words hung in the air, a cruel, impossible echo. I felt a sudden rush of blood to my head, my ears ringing. "Terminated," I managed to stammer, my voice barely a whisper. "But why?" "I just took 5 days off to care for my sick child, with your permission." My mind struggled to process the information, searching for a logical explanation. He shifted uncomfortably, picking up a pen from his desk. "It's not about that, Chloe. This is a business decision. We're looking to streamline operations, and your role, as it currently stands, no longer aligns with our strategic objectives." His explanation felt rehearsed, hollow. "Strategic objectives?" I repeated, my voice rising in disbelief. "I've consistently exceeded targets, brought in major clients, and trained half the team. What about my performance reviews? What about the new client presentation I was supposed to lead?" My frustration was boiling over. He held up a hand, a dismissive gesture. "Your performance has been adequate, Chloe, but we need someone with a different skill set for the future. Someone who can be more present." The word present hung in the air, laced with an insinuation that stung. "More present?" I challenged, my voice now shaking with anger. "Are you implying this is because I took time off for my daughter? Time you explicitly approved?" The injustice of it was overwhelming, a bitter taste in my mouth. He sighed, a show of exasperation. "Chloe, this is not a negotiation. The decision has been made. HR will be in touch to discuss your severance package and the logistics of your departure." He gestured vaguely towards the door, indicating the conversation was over. My vision blurred with unshed tears, but I refused to let them fall. "This is unfair, Mr. Harrison. This is discriminatory. You're firing me because I'm a mother, because I prioritize my child's health." The accusation hung heavy in the silence. He scoffed, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. "That's a serious accusation, Chloe, and completely unfounded. We value all our employees. This is purely a business decision." His tone was now firm, a clear warning. I stood there, stunned, the weight of his words crushing me. 5 years of hard work, dedication, and loyalty, all dismissed in a 5-minute conversation. My career, my financial security, my sense of purpose, all ripped away in an instant. As I walked out of his office, The once familiar sounds of the bustling workplace now felt alien, mocking. My colleagues avoided eye contact, some quickly looking away, others pretending to be engrossed in their screens. The isolation was immediate and profound. I felt a cold, hard resolve settle in my chest. This wasn't just about me. This was about every mother, every person of color who had been overlooked, undervalued, or dismissed in the workplace. This wasn't just a business decision, it was a betrayal. The first few days after the firing were a haze of disbelief and despair. I felt numb, walking through my apartment like a ghost, the silence amplifying my anxieties. Lily, sensing my distress, would often ask why I wasn't going to work, and I struggled to find words to explain. How do you tell a 5-year-old that her mother was fired for taking care of her? The severance package offered by HR was insultingly small, a clear attempt to minimize their liability and my ability to fight back. It felt like a final slap in the face, a confirmation of how little they truly valued my contributions. My financial worries mounted, a heavy burden on my shoulders. I spent hours staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation with Mr. Harrison, searching for any sign I might have missed, any justification for his abrupt decision. The more I thought about it, the more the pieces didn't fit. My performance had been strong, my reviews stellar. His explanation felt like a flimsy excuse. My mind kept circling back to his words. Someone who can be more present. It was a subtle jab, but it resonated deeply. Was this his veiled way of saying that as a single mother, my commitments outside of work made me less desirable, less present, than a male colleague without such responsibilities? I remembered the new project brief addressed to Mark, the one I had initiated. Mark, a white man in his late 20s, had no children and was known for his willingness to work late into the night without complaint. Was he the more present person they were looking for? The thought gnawed at me. I decided to reach out to Sarah again, my close colleague. This time I was direct. Sarah, what's really going on? Why was I fired? Was it because of Lily? Her voice on the phone was hesitant, laced with fear. She clearly wanted to help but was terrified of repercussions. Chloe, I can't say much, she whispered, her voice barely audible. But after you left, Mr. Harrison made some comments about reliability issues and unpredictable absences. He said they needed someone fully committed to Sterling's future. Her words confirmed my deepest fears. She also mentioned that Mark had been promoted to my former role almost immediately after my termination. He's already taken over all your accounts, Chloe, she said, her voice filled with regret. It happened so fast. It felt planned. The pieces were slowly beginning to align. The conversation with Sarah fueled my anger and solidified my suspicions. This wasn't just a business decision. This was discrimination, plain and simple. They had used my legitimate, approved leave to care for my sick child as an excuse to replace me with someone they perceived as more available, someone who fit their narrow definition of an ideal employee. I started researching workplace discrimination laws in Illinois. The more I read, the more I realized that my situation fit the pattern. Discrimination against mothers, especially Black mothers, was a pervasive issue, often masked by seemingly neutral corporate policies or vague performance issues. The thought of fighting back, of taking on a large corporation like Sterling Innovations, felt daunting. I was a single mother, now unemployed, with limited resources. But the injustice burned within me, a fire that refused to be extinguished. I couldn't let them get away with this. I remembered a conversation with my own mother, who had always taught me to stand up for myself, to never let anyone diminish my worth. Your voice is your power, Chloe, she'd always say. Use it. Her words echoed in my mind, giving me strength. I knew I couldn't do this alone. I needed help, expert guidance to navigate the complex legal landscape. My first step was to find a lawyer specializing in employment law and discrimination cases. I started searching online, looking for firms with strong track records. I found a few promising leads and began making calls, explaining my situation to receptionists and paralegals. Each call was emotionally draining, forcing me to relive the humiliation of my termination, but I pushed through, driven by a growing sense of purpose. This wasn't just about getting my job back or receiving a fair severance. This was about fighting for what was right, for justice, not just for myself, but for Lily and for every other woman who had faced similar discrimination. I was determined to make them accountable. My search led me to the office of Ms. Evelyn Reed, a formidable employment lawyer with a reputation for taking on tough discrimination cases. Her office, located in a historic building downtown, exuded quiet confidence. She was a black woman herself, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to see right through me. I sat across from her, recounting my story, the words tumbling out in a rush of anger and frustration. She listened patiently, taking detailed notes, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, a thoughtful look on her face. "Chloe, what you described sounds like a clear case of discrimination based on family responsibilities and potentially race." She explained the legal complexities, outlining the challenges of proving intent in discrimination cases, but also highlighting the strengths of my situation. "The fact that Mr. Harrison explicitly approved your leave and then terminated you immediately upon your return is a significant factor," she stated. "His more present comment is also very telling. Ms. Reed advised me to gather every piece of evidence I could: emails, text messages, performance reviews, any communication related to my leave or my work. Documentation is key, Chloe," she emphasized. "The more evidence we have, the stronger our position." I spent the next few days meticulously compiling everything. I found old performance reviews, all glowing, praising my dedication and results. I unearthed emails from Mr. Harrison commending my work on specific projects, contradicting his later claims of adequate performance. I also found the email where Mr. Harrison explicitly approved my 5-day leave to care for Lily, a crucial piece of evidence. It was a direct contradiction to his implied reason for firing me. Every document I found fueled my resolve, turning my pain into a weapon. Ms. Reed also suggested I reach out to other former employees, especially women or people of color who might have experienced similar treatment at Sterling Innovations. "Patterns of behavior are powerful evidence," she explained. "If this isn't an isolated incident, it strengthens our case significantly." This was a difficult step. I was hesitant to involve others, fearing they might face retaliation. But Ms. Reed assured me that their identities could be protected during the initial stages. I cautiously reached out to a few former colleagues, explaining my situation and asking if they had similar experiences. To my surprise, several responded. One former female colleague, who had recently had a baby, shared how her hours were cut and her responsibilities diminished after her maternity leave, eventually forcing her to resign. Another black male colleague recounted being passed over for promotions despite consistently exceeding targets, while less experienced white colleagues were fast-tracked. These conversations were eye-opening and deeply unsettling. It wasn't just me. Sterling Innovations, despite its public facade of diversity, had a systemic issue. The subtle biases, the business decisions that disproportionately affected certain groups, were part of a larger, insidious pattern. Ms. Reed was thrilled with the additional information. "This is excellent, Chloe," she said, reviewing the statements. "This establishes a pattern of discriminatory practices, not just an isolated incident. It shows a clear disparity in how employees are treated based on factors like race and family status." The process of building the case was emotionally taxing. Reliving the events, recalling the subtle slights, and hearing similar stories from others was painful. There were days when I felt overwhelmed, wanting to give up, to just move on. But then I would look at Lily, and my resolve would harden. I also started looking for a new job, a necessary step for my financial stability. The job search was frustrating, filled with rejections, and the constant reminder of my unexpected unemployment. But I kept going, knowing that this legal fight was a separate, crucial battle. Ms. Reed filed a formal complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EOC, the first step in the legal process. This put Sterling Innovations on notice, forcing them to formally respond to my allegations. The ball was now in their court. The waiting period was agonizing, but I used the time to prepare myself mentally. I practiced what I would say, how I would present my evidence, and how I would remain calm and composed under pressure. I was no longer just a victim, I was a fighter. The EEOC mediation session was the first direct confrontation with Sterling Innovations since my termination. Mr. Harrison was there, flanked by his corporate lawyer, a stern-faced man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The atmosphere in the mediation room was thick with tension, a silent battle of wills. Mr. Harrison, surprisingly, tried to maintain his affable facade, offering a tight, insincere smile. His lawyer, however, was aggressive, immediately dismissing my claims as baseless and opportunistic. He reiterated that my termination was a purely business decision and that Sterling Innovations had no discriminatory practices. Ms. Reed was calm but firm. She systematically presented our evidence, my stellar performance reviews, the email approving my leave, the immediate promotion of Mark, and the statements from other former employees detailing similar patterns of discrimination. Each piece of evidence chipped away at their carefully constructed narrative. Mr. Harrison's face grew increasingly uncomfortable as Ms. Reed laid out the facts. His lawyer tried to interrupt, to discredit our evidence, but Ms. Reed held her ground, her voice unwavering. She highlighted the stark contrast between Sterling's public image of diversity and its internal practices. The mediator, a neutral third party, listened intently, occasionally interjecting with questions for both sides. It was clear that our evidence was compelling, and the mediator seemed to lean towards the validity of our claims, putting pressure on Sterling Innovations to consider a settlement. Their initial settlement offer was a joke, barely more than the original severance package. It was a clear attempt to make me go away quietly, to dismiss my claims as insignificant. Ms. Reed advised me to reject it immediately. "They're testing you, Chloe," she said. "They want to see if you're serious." I was serious, more serious than they could ever imagine. I refused their offer, stating clearly that I would not settle for anything less than fair compensation and a public acknowledgement of their discriminatory practices. This wasn't just about money, it was about accountability. The legal battle escalated. Ms. Reed filed a lawsuit in federal court, bringing my case into the public eye. The news of the lawsuit sent ripples through the Chicago business community, and I started receiving messages of support from unexpected places, including some current employees at Sterling Innovations who were too afraid to speak out publicly. The discovery phase was intense. Sterling Innovations' legal team delved into every aspect of my life, trying to find anything that could discredit me. They requested my personal financial records, my daughter's medical history, and even tried to question my parenting choices. It felt like an invasion of privacy, a desperate attempt to deflect from their own wrongdoing. But Ms. Reed had prepared me for this. "They will try to intimidate you, Chloe," she warned. "They will try to make you feel like you're the one on trial. But remember, you are fighting for justice. Stay strong, stay focused." Her guidance was my anchor. I remained steadfast, refusing to be intimidated. I provided all necessary documentation, confident that my life was an open book and that their tactics would only expose their desperation. Each attempt to undermine me only strengthened my resolve. Meanwhile, Lily was thriving, completely unaware of the legal storm swirling around us. Her laughter was my daily reminder of what I was fighting for. A world where she wouldn't face the same injustices, where her worth wouldn't be questioned because of who she was or who she cared for. The legal team for Sterling Innovations continued to push for a private settlement, clearly wanting to avoid a public trial. They knew that a trial would expose their internal practices and potentially damage their reputation beyond repair. Their offers slowly began to increase, but still fell short of what we believed was just. I also learned that Mark, who had taken my position, was struggling to manage the workload. Clients were complaining, and some major accounts I had managed were reportedly considering taking their business elsewhere. My absence was clearly being felt, undermining Mr. Harrison's narrative of my dispensability. The pressure mounted on Mr. Harrison. His reputation within the company and the industry was now on the line. I heard through the grapevine that the board of directors was starting to ask questions, concerned about the potential financial and reputational damage of a prolonged lawsuit. As the trial date approached, the tension became almost unbearable. I knew that stepping into that courtroom meant facing Mr. Harrison and his lawyers directly, reliving the most painful moments of my professional life. But I was ready. I was ready to speak my truth, loudly and clearly. The courtroom was a stark, imposing space, filled with the hushed anticipation of a significant legal battle. I sat beside Ms. Reed, my heart a drum against my ribs, but my gaze was steady. Across the aisle, Mr. Harrison sat with his legal team, his usual composure visibly strained, his face pale. The trial began with opening statements. Sterling Innovation's lawyer painted a picture of a company committed to fairness, arguing that my termination was a legitimate business decision, a necessary restructuring for efficiency. He tried to portray me as an ungrateful employee, making false accusations. Ms. Reed, in contrast, presented a powerful and concise opening. She spoke of my exemplary performance, my approved leave to care for my sick child, and the immediate, unexplained termination. She promised to reveal a pattern of discrimination, not just against me, but against other employees who dared to prioritize their lives outside of work, or who simply didn't fit a narrow, unspoken mold. My testimony was grueling. I recounted the events leading up to my firing, the phone call with Mr. Harrison, his seemingly understanding words, and then the abrupt, cold termination. I spoke about the subtle comments, the feeling of being undervalued, and the realization that my identity as a black mother was somehow seen as a liability. Mr. Harrison's lawyer subjected me to a relentless cross-examination, attempting to pick apart my statements, to portray me as emotional, unreliable, or even fabricating details. He questioned my dedication, my work ethic, and even my parenting choices, trying to undermine my credibility. But I stood firm. Ms. Reed had prepared me for every possible line of questioning. I answered calmly, factually, refusing to be provoked or intimidated. My voice, though soft, carried the weight of truth, and I could feel the jury's eyes on me, listening intently. Then came the testimony of the former colleagues. Each one bravely shared their experiences, detailing how their careers at Sterling Innovations had been impacted after they had children, or how their race had seemed to limit their opportunities. Their stories corroborated mine, painting a consistent picture of systemic bias. The most damning testimony came from Sarah, my former colleague and friend. Despite the risk to her own career, she testified about Mr. Harrison's comments regarding my reliability issues and the immediate promotion of Mark. Her voice trembled, but her words were clear, directly contradicting Mr. Harrison's claims of a business decision. When Mr. Harrison took the stand, he tried to maintain his polished image, but his answers were evasive, inconsistent, and often contradicted by the evidence we had presented. Under Ms. Reed's sharp cross-examination, he stumbled, his composure cracking under the pressure. Ms. Reed presented the email where he approved my leave, then juxtaposed it with internal memos discussing future staffing needs and more flexible employees, all dated during my leave. The timing was undeniable, the implication clear. His business decision was a thinly veiled excuse. The turning point came when Ms. Reed presented a series of internal emails obtained through discovery between Mr. Harrison and other senior executives. These emails discussed cultural fit and the need for unwavering commitment, often in the context of employees who had taken extended leave or had family responsibilities. One email, in particular, from Mr. Harrison, explicitly stated, "We need to ensure our leadership roles are filled by individuals who can dedicate themselves fully without external distractions." Chloe's recent absence, while understandable, highlights a potential long-term issue for a senior role. The words were a smoking gun, proving discriminatory intent. The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted dramatically. The jury's expressions hardened, and even Mr. Harrison's lawyer looked visibly uncomfortable. The evidence was overwhelming, exposing the true nature of their business decision. In her closing argument, Ms. Reed eloquently summarized our case. She spoke not just of my personal injustice, but of the broader issue of workplace discrimination, particularly against women and people of color who are often forced to choose between their careers and their families. She emphasized that true diversity wasn't just about hiring, but about creating an environment where everyone, regardless of their background or personal circumstances, felt valued and had equal opportunities for growth. She urged the jury to send a clear message that such practices would not be tolerated. I looked at Mr. Harrison, who now sat slumped in his chair, his face ashen. The man who had laughed while firing me, who had dismissed my contributions, was now facing the consequences of his actions. There was no triumph in my heart, only a quiet sense of vindication. The jury retired to deliberate, and the waiting began. It was the longest wait of my life, every minute stretching into an eternity. but I felt a profound sense of peace. I had spoken my truth, and the evidence was undeniable. Whatever the outcome, I had fought. The jury returned their verdict after only a few hours of deliberation. As the foreperson stood, the courtroom fell silent, the air thick with anticipation. My heart hammered against my ribs, but a quiet certainty had settled within me. I had done everything I could. We, the jury, find in favor of the plaintiff, Chloe Davis. The words rang through the courtroom like a bell, clear and resonant. A wave of relief, so profound it almost buckled my knees, washed over me. I looked at Ms. Reed, who gave me a small, triumphant smile. Across the aisle, Mr. Harrison's face drained of all color, his lawyer looking utterly defeated. The jury found Sterling Innovations liable for discrimination based on family responsibilities and race, and awarded me a substantial sum in damages, including back pay, compensatory damages for emotional distress, and punitive damages to deter future misconduct. It was a complete victory, a resounding affirmation of my claims. Mr. Harrison stared at me, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. The man who had been so confident in his power, so dismissive of my worth, was now utterly broken. His smug laughter, which had haunted me since that day, was replaced by the silence of his defeat. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of the injustice, the humiliation, and the fear had finally lifted. The Chicago skyline, once a symbol of my ambition, now felt like a beacon of my liberation. I had stood up for myself, and I had won. News of the verdict spread quickly. Sterling Innovations faced immediate public backlash. Their stock price dipped, and several major clients announced they were reviewing their contracts due to the company's discriminatory practices. The business decision they had made to fire me had turned into a catastrophic business blunder. Within weeks, Mr. Harrison was forced to resign from Sterling Innovations, his reputation in tatters. The board of directors, facing mounting pressure, issued a public apology acknowledging their systemic failures and promising a complete overhaul of their HR policies and corporate culture. Justice was truly served. My victory was more than just a financial settlement. It was a powerful validation. It proved that my worth was not determined by someone else's narrow-minded perceptions or discriminatory biases. It showed that standing up for yourself, even against powerful corporations, is not only possible but necessary. With the settlement, I was able to secure Lily's future and pursue my own dreams on my terms. I decided not to return to the corporate world, at least not in the same way. Instead, I used a portion of the funds to start my own consulting firm, specializing in helping small businesses develop inclusive workplace policies and diverse marketing strategies. I named my company Empower Solutions, a tribute to the journey I had undertaken. I hired a small team, including some of my former colleagues who had been brave enough to speak out, creating a work environment built on respect, empathy, and genuine equity. It was everything Sterling Innovations pretended to be, but genuinely was not. My work now feels deeply fulfilling. I speak at conferences, sharing my story and advocating for fair workplace practices. I mentor young professionals, especially women and people of color, empowering them to recognize their worth and to fight against discrimination. My voice, once silenced, is now a powerful instrument for change. Lily is thriving, a happy, confident child. She sees her mother as strong and resilient, a woman who stands up for what is right. I teach her that her voice matters, that her identity is her strength, and that she should never let anyone diminish her. My life isn't perfect, but it is authentically mine, built on my terms, free from the constraints of others' expectations. The pain of the past has transformed into purpose, and the injustice I faced has become a catalyst for positive change. If you're watching this and you've ever been underestimated, undervalued, or discriminated against, know this: your story matters. Your worth is inherent, not granted by a boss or a company. Don't be afraid to speak your truth, to fight for what's right, and to demand the justice you deserve. Remember, sometimes what feels like an ending is actually the beginning of your greatest empowerment. Your resilience is your superpower, and your voice can change the world. Thank you for listening to my journey.